guys, welcome in. Today we are going to go over our market update. We've got 3 very important topics that we want to cover with you. Number 1 is the most recent Fed meeting and the hike of mortgage interest rates. Number 2, we're going to bring you an update on the foreclosure market. And number 3, we're going to answer the big question that's kind of out there swirling around in all buyers' minds right now, and that is, should I buy a home or should I wait?
Exactly. So if you followed our market updates before, you'll know that we like to use quotes and we like to use charts, but our goal overall is to really put a good explanation together for you so you understand what's really happening in our real estate market. Because if you are watching the news, unfortunately, they have a way of spinning things and headlines together to make you click, and it's usually focused on negativity, right?
That's right. We want to bring you the cold, hard facts and back it up with data.
Absolutely. So let's get started.
Yeah.
So number 1, let's talk about inflation, the Fed rate, all that good stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this quote is from George I don't know how to say his last name, manager of economic research at Realtor.com. With inflation still running at a 40-year high and the Fed expecting a few more rate increases to combat it, mortgage rates will experience upward pressure through the end of 2022. So what he's saying here is that because the federal government is raising the Fed rate to combat inflation, right? Inflation is at a 40-year high, and because inflation is so high, they're raising the Fed rate to try to combat that, and we know that that causes an upward pressure on mortgage interest rates. And when it does that, it has a negative effect on home sales generally because homes become less affordable, right? Because you're spending more money on interest.
That's right.
From this quote, what we gather is that the government is planning on probably raising rates some more to lower that inflation. And when they do that, we can probably expect interest rates to go up a few more times before New Year's.
Mm-hmm.
So just be conscious of that. And what's that lead us to next?
Yeah, so what about foreclosures?
Yeah, what about foreclosures?
Everybody wants to know what's going on. So that brings us to our next slide, our foreclosure activity by year. So guys, as you can see, the number of foreclosures has been going down since about 2011. And that's because the mortgage companies tightened their standards right around that time after the big crash we had in 2008. And so, more qualified buyers equals less foreclosures on the market.
Yes, exactly. And so we had, all the red is obviously all foreclosures over 1 million. And you can see that all the way since 2010, we've been at a huge decline since then, right, to 151,000 in 2021, which kind of takes us to this Adam data, which is a company that studies the market. And they said that only about 214,800 homeowners were facing possible foreclosure in the second quarter of 2022, or just 0.4%, basically less than 0.5%. Of the 58.2 million outstanding mortgages in the US. So less than 0.5% of people are even facing foreclosure, right? And of those that are facing foreclosure, 91% of them still have some equity built in their homes, which means what?
That's good news.
It is good news.
Because then they can sell their home, or it gives homeowners more options.
Right, they have more options, and so most people that have equity are going to try to sell it or get out of it, which wasn't the case in 2010. The market had changed then, and hardly anybody had equity because the way the market was then.
Everybody was over leveraged then, Lenders were giving out a 90% loan for a first mortgage and a 10% loan for a second mortgage to get people into homes. So everyone was maxed out on their equity, and they felt like they didn't have any other option except to just, dump the house and run. And now they have the opportunity to sell, maybe refinance. They got some different options that they can go with.
Yes. And that takes us to this next quote, which is, it's actually a headline, right, from a news source that says U.S. foreclosure activity continues to increase quarterly nearing pre-pandemic levels. Well, looking at that at face value, you would read that and be like, holy crap, the world's falling apart. The real estate market's crashing. If you're looking to buy, you're like, oh yeah, I'm waiting on that deal, right?
Yeah, it's not necessarily untrue, but it's just confusing unless you really dig into the data.
Right, because if you turn around and look at pre-pandemic, like 2017, 2018, 2019, the numbers were not that bad in terms of foreclosures, or way, 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 way better than they were in 2010. So it's not like it's a huge or significant change, but they do want that clickbait headline out there, right?
Oh yeah, they need to induce panic and fear, as usual.
And to try that home, let's put this in perspective for you. So housing supply. If you look at this chart, you can look at housing supply, and is housing supply increasing? Absolutely, yes, it is increasing. Right? And you're going to see headlines surrounding that. But if you look at what housing supply is right now, when we say supply, what we're talking about is the number of homes that are on the market. How long would it take them to sell if no new listings came on the market? We like that to be around 6 months in order for it to be a balanced market, right? As of 2021, the same week in 2021, by the way, this is through the last week of October, the same week in 2021, there's 40% more listings now than there was the same week in 2021. There's 6.3% more listings than the same week in 2020, the last week in October of 2020. But if you compare it to what we consider a normal market, which was like 2017, 2018, 2019, I think we can all agree that was pretty much a normal market then before the market went crazy, right? We have 37.2% less listings than we did in the normal market.
So this is comparing the same weeks, guys, from 2021, 2020, and 2019. So if you look at that same week in 2019, yeah, 37.2% lower.
Right. So just putting things in perspective. So that takes us to our last and our final thing. The final question we want to answer is, should I buy a home now? What do you think?
Well, you know, that's up to everyone to decide,
right?
But we can provide some data that can maybe help bring them around to that decision, right? So if you're looking at rents, rent prices just keep going up. This next slide is going to show you the median asking of rent price since 1988, and those completely just keep soaring up. Every year, you know, your landlord is raising your rent, and unfortunately, a lot of people are getting caught in what we refer to as a rental trap.
Yes.
And so with all the raises in rent every year, it really makes it harder and harder. Your chances of becoming a homeowner get more difficult because...
We call it the rental trap, right?
Yeah, the rent keeps raising up, which makes it harder for you to save for a down payment.
Exactly. We were once in that rental trap.
We were.
I remember that. Yeah, it just becomes really hard to save up for that down payment that you need to get to buy a home eventually. And as you can see from this chart, rents have just been skyrocketing since 1988, and there's no end in sight. We're still expecting rents to continue to go up.
Particularly here in Southwest
Florida. And one of our favorite things to say is, if you're not paying your own mortgage, you're paying someone else's mortgage.
You're always paying a mortgage payment, guys. Are you going to pay your own mortgage payment or pay your landlord's?
Now, there are some advantages either way, but the advantages that we like in terms of home ownership is you have control of the property, which means you can do whatever you want to the property because you own it for the most part within reason. And then secondly, you're building that equity. So when you're making your payments that you would make in a rental situation anyway, you would actually be building equity and long-term wealth, right? So that takes us to our next quote by Odeda he's the Deputy Chief Economist at First American. He said, if you can find a house that meets your financial expectations for a monthly payment and it is a good time for you to buy, then do that. And if you wait for prices to fall, but they never do, you may discover the hard way that a house that you found a year ago that you really loved, that you could afford but you passed up on, is more expensive next year. And you know what? We're not just talking about first-time home buyers, guys and gals. We're actually talking about just everybody. We had plenty of people wanting to buy in Southwest Florida years ago, and they kept waiting and dragging their feet because, we're going to wait for the economy to crash. And even today, they're like, no, the price is higher than what I want to spend or what I can afford.
Yeah, so waiting what they thought was until next year for prices to come down priced some people out of retiring in this market altogether, like killed their dream.
Exactly. So this quote's from Jason Lewis, co-founder and chief data officer at Parsi. In absence of trustworthy, up-to-date information, real estate decisions are increasingly being driven by fear, uncertainty, and doubt. These decisions can be hugely consequential for consumers and businesses, and that's what I think we should leave them with when it comes to should I buy a home now is don't make your decisions based on fear, right? Based on headlines. If you want to know if right now is a good time and you just need a second opinion, Lona and I are here for you. That's what we do. We will sit down with you, and if it's not a right time for you to buy a home, we're going to tell you that. As an example, if you're in a good situation where you have a steady income, you have good credit, and you need a bigger place, then right now may be a time for you, but we can talk that through and we can create a strategy for you to make that happen.
Go over the numbers, look at the data, come up with creative solutions to help you buy those interest rates down. Just, our biggest piece of advice to you is to really just turn off the news and give us a call so that we can give you the most accurate information and help you make an informative decision.
Absolutely. So is there anything else that we maybe left out?
I think that's it.
Well, we really appreciate you watching this market update. Stay tuned for next week. We're just waiting on the final numbers to come out for our local market. So if you want to know what's happening in Tampa, if you want to know what's happening here in Fort Myers, Cape Coral, we're going to let you know that. We're going to report those numbers and get them out to you next week. That's our goal. But as always, we really appreciate you watching. I'm Doug Lugers.
I'm Lona Lugers.
Thanks for watching.